Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular business meeting of the District of Squamish for Tuesday, October 16th. Welcome Squallow, please telecomet, Class Squamish, Oweomeo. Welcome to the traditional territory of the Squamish Nation. There is an amended agenda in front of Council. I'm looking for a motion to adopt the amended agenda, and just for everyone's information, the amendment is to include item 11.1, downtown bridge crossing, and a recommendation from the Committee of the Whole from this afternoon. Moved by Ted, seconded by moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor, opposed to any, motion carries. Are there any notices of motion? It's our last regular business meeting. No notice? Okay. First up, we have delegations, petitions, and proclamations, and we have an award presentation from the National Public Works Week Award. Come on up. And this is Ashifa Dhanani. Close enough? Good.
Perfect. Thank you.
And Ashifa is from the Canadian Public Works Association. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Heinzman, council members, Mr. Bob Smith, Ms. Caroline Waters, and Mr. Ben Kinashenko, staff and residents. As the Mayor said, my name is Ashifa Dhanani, and I'm the Executive Director of the British Columbia chapter of the American Public Works Association. It's my great honor to be here today to present the Canadian Public Works Association 2018 National Public Works Week Award. National Public Weeks, yeah, I'm not going to get that. National Public Works Week Award.
3 times fast.
Thank you. To the District of Squamish in recognition of its 2018 National Public Works Week celebrations and education events. I also have the honor of presenting the 2018 PWABC Technical Innovation Award to the District of Squamish. Each year in May, National Public Works Week recognizes the tens of thousands of men and women in North America who provide and maintain the infrastructure and services collectively known as public works. Mayor Heinzman, this year you graciously kicked off with the public proclamation declaring May 20th to 26th, 2018 National Public Works Week. More than 250 grade 4 elementary students and their teachers and their parents visited the Public Works Yard to learn about the district's wastewater management system and get an up-close look at the heavy equipment fleet. One parent said it was, quote, hands down the absolute best field trip I've ever been on, unquote. Public Works Services personnel and our infrastructure assets are an essential part of our communities that do not always enjoy a high level of public awareness. National Public Works Week's programs and events of the caliber that the District of Squamish conducted go a long way to providing this awareness. I would also like to take a moment to celebrate the District of Squamish for implementing the e-bike and bike trailer programs. This initiative is a true example of a creative idea that enhances public works in providing service to the public, as well as proactively protecting the environment. With this in mind, I would like to invite your worship, Mayor Heinzman, Director of Public Works, Mr. Bob Smith, former Public Works Coordinator, Ms. Caroline Waters, and Technical Operations Manager, Mr. Ben Kinashenko, to come forward to accept the Canadian Public Works National Public Works Week Award and the Public Works Association Technical Innovation Award on behalf of the district and the committed and dedicated Public Works staff. And finally, on behalf of the Canadian Public Works Association and the Public Works Association of BC, I would like to congratulate everyone involved.
Thank you. Before we get up and take a picture and everything, I just want to really give a shout out to our staff who have driven this initiative for many years now, and I think we've won this award a few times, have we not? Yeah, exactly. Like, good job, guys. I know that our staff take this really personally, and they really want to showcase what they do and how well they do it, and they do a great job. And as you know, it reflects in the community, and people really appreciate it. And I dare someone to try to come and take this away from us. No, but well done. I really lift my hands to all the staff in the Public Works Department, Bob and his team, and Suzanne and Dan and everybody. Great job. Good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob, do you want to say a few words, and then maybe I'll give council an opportunity to say anything if they'd like, and then we'll do the formalities.
Sure. I definitely want to thank you, Mayor Heinzman, and council for supporting us. These last 4 years have been great, and it's really humbling to win these awards. There's a lot of competition out there, and my staff do an amazing job, and yeah, it's great. I also want to thank some of the other departments in the district. We get a lot of help from other areas. Engineering comes and helps us out as well. And specifically, I want to do a shout out to Caroline Waters. She has since moved on to the island for her pre-retirement posting, I'm calling, and working in the District of Squamish. So she's here, and she was a massive part of this. So I'd like to give a shout out to Caroline. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well done. Council, any further thoughts?
Yeah, really good job, and it's you know, on my final council meetings, this one and the next one, it's really nice to go out on a high note. While you councillors or running councillors out there, just remember the awards we're getting here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Where do you how do you want to do this?
We can just go up there for.
Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Are they just going to stand here?
Maybe we'll move up the podium, and because then Kelsey won't spontaneously move up.
The Squamish sign is there.
You can take the picture with the Squamish sign, and maybe whoever's here will take a group photo. But,
Just stand in the middle.
Thank you. Well, maybe we should go in there.
Right there.
So
Ooh,
that
you
background
really low.
of this.
Eddie?
Don't be sorry.
Yeah.
You have the sign behind you.
Get Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill's last 4 years.
You guys in the back.
Make sure we scooch in here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our staff continually impress me, and they're always striving to be innovative and solution-oriented, so thanks, everybody. Keep up the great work.
Here, here.
Moving on, in the agenda, we have a consideration of, no, we don't have a proclamation. Consideration of unscheduled public attendance. Is there anyone here who has an urgent matter that needs to be addressed by council before the next council meeting? Seeing no one, we have a timed item at 6 p.m. 7A1, Community Planning Infrastructure, DP 472, Seniors Rental 382, 75 3rd Avenue. As this has variances within the development permit, I'll read the short statement, and it will give the public an opportunity to comment on the variances. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting the following requested variances to the District of Squamish zoning bylaw. Variance to section 41.7 off-street parking stalls for apartment dwelling from 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit to 0.5373 spaces per dwelling unit. Variance to section 41.7 off-street parking stalls for visitor parking from 0.25 spaces per dwelling unit to 0.086 per dwelling unit. Variance to section 419 bicycle parking for Class A bicycle stalls, apartment dwelling from 2 Class A bicycle spaces per dwelling unit to 0.28 Class A bicycle spaces per dwelling unit. Variance to section 41.10A3 motorcycle and scooter parking from each to be counted as the provision of 0.5 required vehicle parking spaces to a maximum of 5% of required parking spaces. 2, each to be counted as the provision of 0.5 required vehicle parking spaces to a maximum of 11% of the required parking spaces. Once the planning department has submitted the report and council has an opportunity to ask some questions, I will confirm it's your turn to speak. Please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. Over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jessie Fletcher, planner with the Community Planning and Infrastructure Department. Tonight I'm presenting Development Permit 472, located at 38275 3rd Avenue for consideration. This is a proposal for affordable seniors rental housing. If approved, the proposal would provide 232 units of affordable housing for seniors and would be the largest affordable rental housing project in Squamish today. 38275 3rd Avenue is located in downtown Squamish within what is more commonly known as the Eaglewood neighborhood. The parcel is currently vacant and has been since it was cleared sometime between 2005 and 2009. Prior to that, it was vegetated. The primary form of adjacent housing is townhouses. There are apartment buildings to the west and the south of the site. The site is across from the Chieftain Center Mall, where the Save On Foods and Shoppers Drug Mart are located. The site's northernmost boundary is approximately 150 meters from the nearest rail line. The site was gifted to the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society by the district in 2002. This is the first development permit received for the parcel. The parcel has been subdivided previously. This is part of an agreement between BC Housing, the Squamish Senior Citizens Home Society, and Polygon Development. This proposal would replace the existing housing at the Manor and the Cedars. The parcel where the existing 70 units of affordable seniors housing is located has received third reading for rezoning to permit a mixed-use market housing development. 38275 3rd Avenue is zoned Comprehensive Development Zone 2. CD Zone 2 includes a majority of the parcels to the north and west, as shown on the image above. The yellow box is the approximate location of the proposed development. The CD2 zone is unlike a lot of other zones in Squamish in that it only prescribes a maximum height of 6 stories. It does not prescribe setbacks. The CD2 zone's density is a cap on the maximum number of units for the entire CD2 zone at 660 dwelling units and a maximum amount of commercial use. Non-market housing, as secured with a housing agreement, is permitted to exceed the maximum density. This site does have a housing agreement on title that secures all units as non-market rental housing in perpetuity. The site to the south is zoned CD48, which permits seniors assisted living units. And the parcel across the street is zoned C4, downtown commercial. The property is within a flood hazard area and is adjacent to a secondary floodway. Fill within the setback cannot exceed a slope of 5 to 1. The parcel is located within Development Permit Area 7, multifamily residential, as laid out in the 2009 OCP. DPA 7 is established to ensure that character and design are compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and to improve the design quality of multifamily developments. This development permit seeks to allow for the construction of a 5-story apartment building with common amenity space, parking, and a small office space on the ground floor. The building proposes a gross floor area of 12,000 square meters, about 139,000 square feet, and an FAR of 1.23. The front yard setback is proposed to be 3.05 meters, about 10 feet, while the rear and side yard setbacks are proposed to be about 6 meters. The red arrows on the screen above highlight the main exterior circulation patterns on the overall site plan. The yellow arrows above highlight the paths that are maintained as district right-of-ways for public access. The main exterior finishing materials include stone cladding, wood-clad structural columns and beams, cementitious shingles in Georgian brick, and cementitious siding in Tate Olive, Dijon, natural linen, and Georgian brick. This is the first floor of the proposed development. It includes the facility parking, including visitor parking, and 1 parking stall for the office space. It also includes bicycle parking and personal storage. The personal storage facilities can also be used as bicycle storage if users prefer. The men's shed is located along 3rd Avenue. This is a close-up of some of the principal amenities on the ground floor, including a bed bug sauna, a dog wash, administrative office for the society, a resident lounge, and multi-purpose room, and a fitness facility, and an area for the meal program. This is the landscape plan. The landscape plan includes gardening planters, including areas for tool storage and potting and or green waste. An outdoor seating area is provided on the communal patio. A small gazebo is also located on site. An adventure play area including a playhouse, play logs that are peeled and sanded, wood fiber play surface are proposed. Architectural and landscape drawings are included as part of attachment 1 of your report this evening. A shadow study was provided showing the shadow impacts of the building in the winter as shown above, 3 times a day. In the fall and the spring, again at 10 a.m., 12 p.m., and at 3 p.m. And in the summer at 10 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. Development permit 472 was presented to the Advisory Design Panel on September 20th. Attachment 2 was not included in your report this evening, but was distributed to you tonight in blue paper, and that was the attachment with the ADP minutes. Advisory Design Panel passed the following resolution, that the Advisory Design Panel supports the project as presented and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the recommendations addressed in the September 20, 2018 meeting. Staff note that the majority of the comments that specifically addressed the form and character of the building were not addressed due to the financial constraints of the project. By not addressing some of the larger items such as an extended porte share, the society indicated they preferred to ensure the maximum number of affordable units were provided. The 4 items above are examples of the form and character recommendations. The applicant did extend the roof of the formerly exposed B2 balconies to ensure that all residents would have outdoor space protected from the elements. And many of the comments as they related to functionality have been considered by the applicant and will be considered throughout the building phase. In summary, the proposal generally meets Development Permit Area 7 form and character guidelines. The table above summarizes where the development is only partially meeting the guidelines. The impact on the neighboring units were taken into consideration and mitigated by introducing setbacks where the zone did not prescribe any. There is an impact, however, and therefore the guideline is arguably only partially being met. Development Permit Area 7 also requires that all units be oriented to a street, public or private. Again, arguably this guideline is difficult to apply to an apartment building that does not have a lane in the rear. And then, again, the preference would be for a single access to a site such as this. But given the size of the development and the type of development, the entry as designed will facilitate easier emergency vehicle access and mitigate the impacts of many vehicles entering and exiting the site. The project has 4 variances associated with it. Staff would like to clarify that the Local Government Act allows variances to be considered by council in accordance with the development permit as opposed to the development variance permit process. All 4 variances relate to parking, both vehicular and bicycle parking. Generally, parking requirements prescribed to market housing do not reflect the parking needs of non-market or seniors housing in well-serviced areas. A number of jurisdictions in the Lower Mainland area have developed separate parking requirements for senior citizen housing projects. 1 parking stall for every 4 residential units is a common minimum parking standard in those municipalities. These were established in the Metro Vancouver apartment parking study. The Society proposes, so variance number 1, to provide a total of 133 parking stalls, inclusive of the scooter and motorcycle parking for the 232 residents. The Society proposes to manage this reduction in parking by providing information regarding the car share to residents and by charging $40 a month for a parking stall. Not counting the scooter parking, this means that a parking stall would be available to 51% of residents. This far exceeds the current need that society anticipates. Currently, the facility has 34 vehicles associated with the 70 units. Staff spoke to the administrators at the Kiwanis Housing Society in Richmond, who noted that approximately 35% of their residents drive. Their 296-unit development only provides 66 units of parking, and that includes and they have a current wait list. And they also charge for parking. The 35% number includes those who are on their wait list. The image above highlights the services that are within 300 meters radius of the facility, which is approximately a 5-minute walk. This includes the Transit Exchange, a grocery store, pharmacy, the 55 Activity Center, and Evelyn Park. The second variance is to the off-street parking stalls for visitors. Currently, the Cedars in the Manor only have one visitor parking space, although it's likely that visitors utilize other on-site parking facilities. Given the likely ratio of residents that will have vehicles, staff believe that additional guest parking could be accommodated through the proposed 133 resident stalls. The zoning bylaw would require that they have 58 required stalls, and they are proposing 20 stalls for visitors on site. The third request is to the bicycle parking requirements. The zoning bylaw would require that they provide 464 spaces, while the society is proposing to provide 66 spaces. According to the society, there are approximately only 10 bicycles on the current facilities for the 70 units. The proposed bicycle parking would provide a dedicated bicycle parking for 28% of the units. If the 66 units of bicycle parking prove to be insufficient, the 186 storage lockers are sized to accommodate a bicycle and could serve this need for residents. The society is also seeking to increase, this is the fourth variance, the number of scooter stalls that can be counted as half a parking space from 5% of the overall spaces to a maximum of 11% of the overall spaces. This means that 30 scooter stalls would count as 15 of the required parking stalls. There are approximately 5 to 6 scooters currently at the Cedars in the Manor at one time. The variance would allow for the society to provide dedicated scooter parking to 13% of the units. Staff suggests supporting the requested variances given that the parking needs associated with seniors' rental housing in well-serviced areas, such as downtown, are considerably different than typical market housing parking needs. Development Permit 472 was posted to the district's development showcase. 7 requests for a public information meeting were received within the 21-day showcase timeframe. 3 additional requests were made for the project at 38201 3rd Avenue. The partner project in this process, the applicant was required to hold a public information meeting regarding this project and the rezoning at 38201 3rd. The meeting was held at on August 28th at the 55 Activity Center. Over 50 comments were received as part of that process and are included as attachment 3 in your report this evening. They're printed on the blue paper tonight and were handed out to you prior to the meeting. All those comments include comments that were also received as part of the rezoning at 38201 3rd Avenue. Various notices were sent to residents within 100 meters of the property as per legislative requirements. 2 comments were received following this. These have been distributed again on blue paper along with 8 comments that had been previously received and were not included in the report package. 10 individuals provided comments regarding the development permit. Comments spoke to the height, design, wind, view, and privacy impacts. 4 spoke directly to the parking variance and cited existing concerns about parking in the Eaglewood neighborhood as reasons not to consider the parking variance. Other comments did not speak to the variance specifically, but rather cited either the height as being too tall for the location or the impacts that the height could have on neighboring properties, including view impacts, wind impacts, privacy impacts, and shading impacts. One letter did not like the design of the building. Staff recommend that the district authorize the development permit subject to the provision of bonding and registration of the applicant by the applicant of a flood covenant on title. Staff also recommend that development permit 472 include variances to the following sections of the zoning bylaw. And further, staff recommend that mayor and the corporate officer be authorized to execute the development permit, that the district waive development permit application fees for the seniors rental development permit application in the amount of $33,800, and that the district waive building permit fees for the seniors rental building permit application in the amount of $400,000.
Thank you. Council, any questions for clarification purposes? Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you. I appreciate the work that you guys have done with the parking and the insights. My only concern is that the seniors have access to all the amenities downtown, but our healthcare transportation system is not fantastic for that many seniors. They will have to drive to appointments in the city and in Whistler because we don't have the facilities here to address many seniors' healthcare needs. I'm wondering if anything has been thought. I'm not saying that there should be more parking because I agree with the sentiments expressed there, but I worry and I'm concerned about people accessing their healthcare needs, and that's a lot of seniors in one building. Has anything been thought about as far as transportation, like perhaps the proponent providing a van or something for the facility? Instead of, like, as something instead of the parking?
Yes, we do recognize that that is a concern. And there's a few points to make. One is that there is, the seniors are very interested in being part of the car share program that's already in place in Squamish and maybe expanding that. But I think outside of this development permit proposal, we have to look at what other options can we collaborate with the seniors and the health providers to connect them outside of the vehicle trips. Because we know that a lot of the seniors that live in such housing arrangements don't have a vehicle. So it's not a parking issue, it's more of a transportation issue.
Right, can I just follow up with that?
Yeah, and we do have to keep within the parameters of the development permit.
Absolutely.
I'll leave a bit of latitude, but yeah.
It's a parking leniency.
It's related to the parking, absolutely.
It's relating to the parking leniency. So, if we're giving a parking leniency and seniors aren't able to have their own vehicles because of affordability of a parking space or lack of availability of a parking space, and they do have to get to appointments, we have limited handy dart service. And I guess my point is that the cities that were looked at have adequate transportation systems and transportation to healthcare. They have regional transportation to hospitals, and really it's the hospitals that, like, how are they going to get down to the city? They need to get to appointments in the city. So the car share mode, we have 2 car shares. Is the proponent interested in purchasing more car shares for this? I see Peter nodding his head, so I will say yes. Thank you. Okay.
I suspect car share will fit the need. Car share will grow as the need is there. I mean, if there's a business case for car share, it will go into that.
Okay.
I have a question. Just curious about the requested variance for motorcycle and scooter parking. Our bylaws worded weirdly with a maximum in there. I thought that was, why would we even have a maximum? Other than, I guess, you could have 100%. And is the percentage done on, is the 11% done on what the bylaw requires or what they're actually providing in terms of parking?
Through you, Mayor, so the first part is the maximum is to, not the maximum that you can have, but the maximum you can count towards your parking. So each scooter counts as half a stall, so you can replace it up to 50%, up to a maximum of 5%. So.
Oh, for your parking requirement. So.
And the calculations are done based on what they would actually be providing rather than on what would be required as a bylaw right now.
So going up to 11% is actually less than what they normally be required with 5% of the entire amount.
The 11% would be less than the maximum they would be permitted to count towards the parking if they were to provide the entire 290 spaces.
Exactly. So it sounds like it's an increase in scooter spaces?
It's an increase of what can be counted towards parking.
I know.
Based on a reduction is.
Oh, just a little bit weird. Okay. Questions, clarification? Councillor Elliott.
Just looking at some of the comments from the ABP around the outdoor space, and which parts are covered? So the gazebo is a covered seating area, but is there anything else?
Through Mayor, that is the only part, the gazebo is the only part of the outdoor space that is covered. And then the residents all have covered balconies.
Okay. And then looking at the garden planters, I don't see like a small shed there for supplies, which means that everyone would be having to own their own garden supplies. And I'm wondering if someone's thought about just having a shed there to keep starting materials.
Through you, Mayor, there is a greenhouse located on the north and then an area indicated for tool storage to the south of the site on the landscape plans.
Councillor Lee, is that?
I can't see that on my drawing, but as long as it's there.
And so tool storage is located in this area, and then there's a greenhouse located up on the north, or the west side.
And then the only thing else I saw was there's no seating around the adventure playground. So if someone wanted to sit and watch a child play,
Council, any other questions before I go to the public? There's still lots of opportunity after that as well. Don't see anyone. As there are variances in this development permit, the public has an opportunity to be heard, so please put your hand up and come up to the podium if you'd like to speak to the variances. Nobody? I'll ask for a second time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the variances? I'll ask for a third time. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the variances? I have another question. One of the comments the ADP made was about the colors. And the report says that the proponent's fine with the colors, but if they want to change them in the future, they'd have to come back for another DP. Do we really need to create that bureaucratic step? Like if the proponents want to change the color, we're not going to change the colors if they have to come back for another DP, I'll tell you that right now. So I'd rather create a system whereby if they just run it by staff to add a more bold accent color or something like that in the future, they can do that without having to go through this process.
For you, Mayor, I believe there is an exemption in our development permit area guidelines that as long as the change in color is in line with the DPA guidelines, and that would be exempt from going through a development permit process.
So they can change the colors. And I think we essentially took out the prescriptive colors in the DP guidelines anyway.
That's right. So they comply with our
So
guidelines.
they should be able to, if they want to change the colors, to change the colors, and they do that in concert with the planning staff guidelines.
Yes.
Okay, good. I just want to reiterate a comment that Councillor Elliott made about covered areas. Particularly on developments like this, it'd be good to have, up at Quest they have these great covered walkway areas that you can actually walk, along the edge of a building, under a walkway to get to the next building. And I think particularly in this type of development, it'd be nice to see some of these walkways actually covered, even if it's the one that goes along the side of the building, similar to the ones at Quest, like they have the clear. But I think we need to start thinking that way in how we create the built environment around these buildings. Council, any other questions? I don't see any. There's a recommended motion in front of council if anyone would like to move it. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Race. Councillor Pryor, do you want to speak to the motion?
No, I'm happy to see this get off the ground and start moving forward, so I like the colors.
You like what?
I like the colors.
Councillor Spell?
Thanks. When this was coming for first and second reading, I had my concerns about the proposal and about the financing.
Councillor Chappelle?
Yep,
We are at third reading.
Yep, I am
Options,
speaking.
So focus on the.
I am.
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Mayor Heinzman. At third reading, I'm pretty excited to see this mass of seniors housing come forward. It's definitely essential to our community. I'm going to be voting in favor. I do have concerns about the parking and about the lack of space. We already have a lot of parking issues downtown. It's really the healthcare transportation, and I think that it's not just this seniors housing development, it's healthcare transportation in general that we're going to have to address. Hopefully in the new council and whoever's elected will take an opportunity to address healthcare transportation in our community, because this will bring in a massive need for transportation alternatives. And I don't think building parking stalls for that is a good idea. I think that moving forward with alternatives is a good idea. I'm happy to see the proponents posing some car share and some answers to those questions. I'll be supporting this.
Council, anybody else want to make a comment? Is that a yes?
That was a yes.
Go
That's
ahead.
me signaling, yeah. So, thank you, and I'm also supporting this. This is not the first time we've seen this. We've been dealing with this in committee and then as Councillor Chappelle says at the zoning. And so I've been generally pleased with this project as it's moved through. There's been tweaks here and there. There's been recommendations from the ADP. This is form and character, and I am also content with the colors, notwithstanding the ADP comments, and so happy to support this at this stage and look forward to this now being built.
Thank you. I'll say a few words. Yeah, I'll support this. My comments weren't about colors. It was about the bureaucratic process of having to go through a DP to change the color. So I won't make a critical comment of the colors necessarily. I think generally it obviously meets our guidelines. I'm okay with the variances on a seniors housing development like this. I suspect all the parking won't actually be used by the residents, certainly in the long term, but I think it's supportable for sure. The other variances with regard to scooter parking and visitor parking, I think those are supportable as well. I do agree, and it's another conversation altogether about how to connect this, what's going to be quite a dense hub with public transit, with healthcare transit, and those kinds of things. I think that's definitely a collaborative conversation that needs to move forward, and we need to work on some solutions. I'm not sure if once the Housing Society pays all its bills building this thing, they somehow get some funding to get a van, which would be really helpful, I think, with that many seniors all in one place. So I know those are goals that the society will be looking towards in the future. It meets all the height aspects of the zoning, so we don't have any decisions necessarily on the height. I know there was some comments about it being too high in proximity. That land has been zoned to that height for years, if not decades, so there's nothing that we actually have discretion on with regard to the height. So I will be supporting this DP, the variances. Anyone else? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And that was the whole shoot match. We can do all that in one motion. Next timed item is the temporary use permit number 59 and development permit number 495, carbon engineering at Squamish Oceanfront.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Elaine Naseby and I'm a planner with Community Planning. This evening I'm bringing forward two items related to carbon engineering. It is a temporary use permit as well as a development permit with variances. The location is at the Oceanfront, and the blue image or the blue overlay on the aerial shows the footprint where carbon engineering wishes to relocate to. To the north is downtown Squamish. To the south is Howe Sound. West is the Squamish terminals and the estuary. And to the east is the Mamquam Blind Channel and the Site B industrial land. Carbon Engineering is a research and development company that is working to capture carbon dioxide out of the air and reuse it in transportation fuels, combating global greenhouse gas emissions. Carbon Engineering has been operating out of the existing aging buildings on the Oceanfront Peninsula since 2015. As part of the Oceanfront Park construction, Galbraith Road will be extended along its right-of-way to the future park. The carbon engineering offices in the old SODC office building are partly located within the road right-of-way. They wish to move their offices and equipment to the east, essentially leapfrogging over the existing Blue Barn building, which will remain, to a temporary location with ATCO trailer offices. The research and development use is not a permitted use on the parcel they wish to relocate to. Relocation requires a temporary use permit to allow the temporary research and development use, and a development permit is required to locate the temporary buildings and research and development equipment. This image shows the zoning at the Oceanfront Peninsula, Comprehensive Development Zone number 69. The location that Carbon Engineering wishes to move to is Block D, which is for residential mixed use. The temporary use permit would allow a change in use to allow research and development, resulting in a temporary activation of the vacant site. The land is in a state of change as it is developed from its previous industrial zoning to the comprehensive development master planned community that was envisioned in the sub-area plan. The development permit would allow the placement of buildings and the relocation of equipment. And that consists of office space, lab space, 4 pieces of equipment, and a new temporary structure over 1 piece of equipment. The development preliminary guidelines that are in place for the oceanfront are for the significant residential and mixed-use buildings that are anticipated in the sub-area plan. As the proposed use is temporary and does not reflect those future uses, the development permit guidelines could be seen as not relevant to this temporary use. The ATCO trailers are acceptable regarding form and character for the temporary aspect and the research and development use. The site is not highly visible from existing residential properties. This is a site plan of what is proposed. The brown band shows the future Galbraith Road, and the blue square shows the existing carbon engineering offices. So as mentioned, the Blue Barn will remain. There would be ATCO trailers to the other side of the Blue Barn with parking, and then the equipment would be relocated north of the Blue Barn in proximity to the new road. The development permit includes variances. There are typical zoning bylaw regulations that require paving parking areas, installing landscaping, as well as related to fencing. Staff suggests that these regulations not be required for this temporary use. In terms of policy, temporary use permits are addressed in section 31 of the district's 2040 OCP. And so it does support applications that provide a short-term opportunity when considered appropriate, that don't negatively affect surrounding businesses or properties, that relate to the existing land use and surrounding land use, both of which are currently vacant, that there be no conflict with residential land use, no impact on environmentally sensitive areas, and provision of adequate servicing. So this application was referred to Vancouver Coastal Health. There will be an on-site septic holding tank constructed to provide the sanitary sewer service, and VCH recommends that the applicant enter into a restrictive covenant on title related to that. Also, the policy speaks to meeting other relevant OCP policies, and staff would highlight that it does meet environmental and economic benefits highlighted in the OCP. The application aligns with council priorities related to environment. Carbon engineering is doing groundbreaking research to reduce the carbon footprint of the transportation sector, recycling atmospheric carbon dioxide into liquid fuel. In terms of economic development, it is a progressive company that is a significant local employer, and our employment land strategy from 2014 highlights that the Oceanfront be significant employment lands for the district in the range of 20% of our employment lands. And in terms of open and transparent government, this application was at the consult level on the IAP2 spectrum. It was uploaded to our development showcase webpage. There was notification to neighbors for the variance. There was a development application sign on the parcel and a newspaper notice. So the recommendation is that staff approves or recommends approval of the temporary use permit. And this slide highlights conditions to be met prior to the issuance of the temporary use permit. Those include a fire safety plan, flood covenant, the restrictive covenant related to the sewage holding tank, as well as signing a agreement with the applicant related to the variances to the zoning bylaw for that parcel. The recommendation is also to approve the development permit with the variances, those variances relating to fencing, landscaping, and paving parking lots and landscaping. Thank you.
Thank you. As this is a temporary use permit and DP with variances, I'm just going to quickly read this and then I'll go to Councillor Race and Councillor Elliott. Temporary use permit number 59-37322 Galbraith Road. The proponent and members of the public will be given the opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting the following requested temporary use permit and variances to the zoning bylaw. Section 4.6 fencing, from fencing height, barbed wire, and razor wire requirements to fencing height is not restricted and barbed wire fence is permitted. Section 4.27 landscaping, from landscaping requirements in section 4.27 to landscaping not required. And section 41.11 design criteria, from surface and landscaping requirements in section 41.11 to paving and landscaping and parking area is not required. After I've confirmed it is your turn to speak, please approach the podium and commence your remarks by clearly stating your name and address. Please note that speakers will be given a maximum of 5 minutes to address council. Before we go there, I will see if council has some questions for clarification purposes. Councillor Race and Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. The question I had was around the fencing, and what I didn't get from the report, but maybe you've answered it, is the reason that we need a variance for fencing for the barbed wire is because this is going into a residential zone, a zone that's already zoned residential. But the other question was, it just says fence height is not restricted and barbed wire fence is permitted. Am I correct in saying that that would be barbed wire 3 strands above 1.83 meters as it was in the existing? You go back right there. So you look at C, in an industrial zone, and this is kind of an industrial use, you could have maximum 3 strings of barbed wire or razor wire on a fence above a height of 1.83 meters. And so is that particular restriction going into the variance? So in other words, you wouldn't have barbed wire starting 1 foot off the ground.
Mayor Heinzman, through you, I believe that the existing fencing aligns with this, being about 6 feet with 3 strands. This is the actual wording of the variance.
Yeah, but it just says 2 fence heights is not restricted and barbed wire fence is permitted, but it doesn't say 3 strands above 1.83 meters. Would it be difficult to change that in the finished product?
Through Mayor Heinzman, it would not be difficult to change that.
Just to make it clear. Councillor Elliott?
My question was about the septic tank, and when this use moves to its permanent location, what does that do to the residential lots because there's now a septic tank there?
Mayor
So I was confused about what the covenant means. Will Carbon Engineering be responsible for cleaning that up? Or
Mayor
how does that
Heinzman, through you specifically, that's what the covenant does. It requires them to remove it when the temporary use has run its course.
It requires the landowner to remove it.
Yes.
Any other questions for clarification purposes, Councillor? I'll go to the public to see if there's anyone who would like to speak to this temporary use permit and/or the variances on the development permit. Please come on up, state your name and address, and if you represent yourself, a business or an organization.
Mayor Heisman, councillors, good evening. My name is Toby Stedham. I'm a project manager with Carbon Engineering, and I'd just like to say a few words in support of this application, if I may. So as mentioned, Carbon Engineering is a carbon capture company currently developing technology and processes to remove atmospheric carbon dioxide and then either use it for sequestering underground or making it into a renewable transport fuel. And currently we've successfully refined our fuels from atmospheric carbon dioxide and turned it into transport grade gasoline, diesel and jet fuel. So this development permit, if it's approved, will allow us to continue our research and development activities here in Squamish. We are certainly keen to stay here in Squamish, and we employ 45 people in the local area, so we are bringing employment to the area, and we are also expanding, so we're currently actively recruiting for another 8 posts as well. So as well as being part of an exciting technology and being an employer in the area, we are supporting a lot of local organisations as well, a lot of local companies and the local economy, and 85% of the employees that work at Carbon Engineering live in Squamish as well. So this permit, if approved, will allow us to continue our research and development activities here out to December 2022, and certainly I hope that we'd be there, or here in Squamish, certainly beyond that.
Thank you very much. Do you have a question for this?
Yeah, I was just wondering, can you clarify the intent with respect to the fence?
Yes, so I can, and actually I've just had some clarification on that today. The intent will be that the fence will be a 6-foot chain link fence, and the requirement for barbed wire has been, we've decided that that's no longer a requirement. So it will simply be a 6-foot high chain link fence with no barbed wire on top.
Yeah,
If I may, so if we changed it just to fence height is restricted to 6 feet or 1.83 meters, that would be okay?
That would be acceptable, yes.
Councillor
Yeah, until you have people climbing.
Elliott.
Yes.
Councillor Elliott, and then Councillor Byrne.
I didn't have my hand.
Oh, you did?
That was me.
Councillor Byrne.
I already said my bit.
Or was it you then?
At the end of the term.
Well, I was just saying it's okay to take that wording out, and then when people start climbing the fence, then they're going to have to put the wording back in.
I mean, it may be appreciated if possible to leave the option for us to add 3 strands of barbed wire at some point in the future. However, the discussions that we've had is that for anyone that's determined a 6-foot fence or a 6-foot fence with barbed wire is unlikely to stop them, because either they'll climb over it, or if there's barbed wire on top, they'll cut a hole through it, or they'll cut the locks on the gate. So what we're considering instead of barbed wire is other security measures, such as alarm systems and that kind of thing. So that's the alternatives that we're considering for barbed wire.
Yeah, and just, Councillor Rees, was your concern you just wanted to be a certain height above barbed wire, just to be clear, or?
Well, that's what it presently is. If you look at C, that's the present restriction. You can have barbed wire 3 strings above 1.85 meters. And it was just a matter of incorporating that restriction into the thing that we're going to.
Yeah. And am I correct in assuming that this is there to, if it's in a residential zone, to prevent people in the residential area going into an area? But if there's really nobody living down there, does the intent of our bylaw really apply?
Mayor Heisman, through you, so the regulation relates to residential zoned land. So barbed wire is not permitted on residential zoned land, and this is residential zoned land. So although it's sort of an industrial research and development use, that rule still applies because of the zoning.
Okay.
But the intention is that I think, the Mayor, you're correct. The intention does not apply because there's no residential there now, and we're probably quite far away from there being residential development.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak at this TUP and variances on the DP? I'll ask for a second time, is there anyone who'd like to speak to the temporary use permit and the variances? And I'll ask for a third and final time, is there anyone who'd like to speak to the TUP and variances on the DP? Seeing none, council, are there any more questions? I'm happy to move the recommendation with the removal of barbed wire. It sounds like the promoter doesn't care either way.
Okay.
Seconded, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Chappelle. I'm happy to speak to this quickly. Yeah, I think Carbon Engineering is one of those fantastic success stories, and really happy they've been a part of our community for the last 4 years. Look forward to even bigger and greater things, and I know this is just a step to allow you to still have a home while you eventually, hopefully, grow into something even bigger and better once the Oceanfront gets further down or wherever you find yourself in the future. But I think this is also something that facilitates the road going down to the beach and actually gets that development underway as well. So I think this is actually a critical file to be able to move forward for both of those reasons, success of Carbon Engineering, but also to hopefully get the Oceanfront up and running. Would anyone else like to speak to it? Seeing no one, I'll call the question. You want to speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly, and I didn't have a problem with this. This is a relatively easy one for me, just moving the office building, and I didn't want to make too much of a fuss about the fence. My first choice would have been to put those restrictions in just in case they do change their mind in the future and prevent them having to come back, but I'm happy with this, and so.
I'm actually happy either way. If you would like to add an amendment to.
Well, yeah, because it just does give a little bit of future flexibility, and maybe it'll kick the bears out or something, but.
Can we, if I may, Councillor Ways, can we add wording that says that if barbed wire is added, it be on a 6-foot fence, so it's not like short? Is that your?
Well, my thing would be just a maximum of 3 strings, barbed wire, not razor wire, barbed wire, on a fence above a height of 1.83 meters, which gives you that little cantilever arm thing. So, and just add that to the bottom line.
So that's an amendment. I'll second that amendment. On the amendment. Call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That just gives you options in the future. On the main motion as amended, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was a really long motion. Did we need 2 motions for the TUP and the DP with variances? Or is it just one? They're both together, yeah, okay. Moving on to bylaws, A1, District of Squamish zoning bylaw, number 2200-2011, amendment bylaws, 1080 Wilson Crescent, number 2271.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ashifa, planner with Community Planning and Infrastructure, and this is Devin Kinaga, municipal engineer in the engineering department. And tonight, I'm presenting the application for the rezoning of 1080 Wilson Crescent for Council's consideration of first reading. So this lot's located in the Wilson Crescent Dentville neighborhood, as seen in the above map. The OCP land use designation is residential neighborhoods. The current zoning is multiple unit residential 2, RM2. The surrounding neighborhood is predominantly zoned either RM1 or RM2. The proposal is to rezone the lot from RM2 to a CD zone to allow for a small single unit dwelling. The lot is triangular shaped. It's approximately 455 square feet in area. So the proposed single unit dwelling is shown here. It's a 3-story dwelling with a cupola above the 3rd story. There's an external stairway on the southeast side of the dwelling that's proposed to access the upper stories. And according to the metrics submitted by the applicant, the ground floor is 105 square feet. It contains an undersized parking space that is 8 feet by 15 feet in dimension. The lot's located in a flood hazard area, so there's no habitable floor area permitted on the ground floor. The second floor is 236 square feet, and the third floor is also 236 square feet. So there's a total of 472 square feet of habitable floor area. So this is an overview of the proposed metrics for the CD93 zone that could accommodate the application. The table provides the small lot RS3 and the current RM2 townhouse zoning metrics for comparison. The proposed setbacks are smaller than both the RS3 and the RM2 zones, and the FAR and the lot coverage are higher. The height is relatively in line with the current RM2 zoning. The applicant submitted a request after the agenda was published to make a few changes to the CD93 zone, and these changes could be made prior to second reading via council motion if desired, and these are summarized in the last column. So the lot has a number of site challenges, which I will describe here. The red dashed line in the photo is just a rough representation of where the lot lines are. So there's a chain link fence at the back of the lot. This delineates the edge of the railway right-of-way. The tracks are located on the other side of the fence. CN is not in support of the development. They provided a list of mitigation strategies. The power pole at the far end of the lot supports power lines which could be potentially within the limits of approach for worker safety during construction of the site. The applicant has been advised to work with BC Hydro to resolve any challenges around the hydro lines. The sanitary lift station is located, it's behind these municipal employees shown in the picture. And when open for maintenance, odors can be significant. We require regular access for maintenance. In addition to public works vehicles, need to be parked adjacent to the station for servicing, and these district vehicles could potentially limit driveway access to the proposed home at any time of day. There's also a non-functioning culvert. It's located under the road, and if it was functioning, it would direct water towards the site. So a stormwater feature is needed to address stormwater in both the boulevard area and as well as on the lot. And it's the district's expectation that the applicant will design and install this feature. There's also a fire hydrant that's located approximately half a meter from the lot, and it's too close to the lot to be utilized in the event of a fire. The hydrant needs to be moved to resolve this issue, and the district has offered to supply a new hydrant, but it's also our expectation that the applicant will cover the cost of labor to move and also the cost of additional piping. So here's some additional site photos for context. So again, you can see the siting of our existing district infrastructure, including the fire hydrant and the lift station in relation to the lot. And the hydro lines and the CN rail fence line are also shown. So the rezoning's in alignment with the residential neighborhoods OCP land use designation. Our OCP housing policy supports a mix of housing forms and densities. It supports small lot infill development, and it also encourages tiny homes. The lot is located close to existing sewer and water services. So we only received one request for a public information meeting during the 21-day period. And staff are recommending that amendment bylaw 2371 be given first reading, and further that the following items are completed prior to consideration of adoption. 1, a land development agreement that outlines the applicant's responsibilities for fire hydrant relocation, water main replacement, and stormwater management off-site. 2, a covenant that would address the sanitary lift station, including noise, odor, operation and maintenance, and would also include driveway access and parking restrictions. A flood hazard assessment and a flood covenant. Rail noise and vibration covenant. And finally, an invasive species management plan because there's no one Japanese knotweed on site. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Councilor Cryer.
Is CM just worried about vibration? Is that what their big worry is?
I think they're worried about the proximity.
It's too close.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. Proximity. Worried about proximity.
What about proximity?
The question was, CN, what is CN worried about? And staff's answer was they're worried about proximity to the railway corridor. Councillor Kent.
Just curious, under the land development agreement, what's some of the costs associated with that? Do we have any idea? With the moving of the hydrant, et cetera, what the expectations might be?
Through the Mayor. So costs for that, I don't have an exact number, but we would be providing the hydrant and the valves as part of our hydrant replacement program. So it really comes down to labor rates essentially, and then minimal material costs. If I had to give a ballpark, it would be in the $5,000 to $15,000, possibly more depending on labor range.
Councillor, any other questions? Councillor Elliott.
Given all the issues with this piece of property, what is making staff recommend this for first reading?
Through you, the applicant's shown a willingness to and a strong desire to move forward, so we're trying to work with him to hopefully accommodate some development on the site.
If I could add to that, the property is zoned for residential development. It's just unfeasible with the way the setbacks are placed on such a small property. And housing diversity and support for smaller homes is something that I also support. So we have initially struggled with this application because it looked like the costs are so significant that it wouldn't be worthwhile pursuing a rezoning. However, the applicant has consistently shown that they want to move forward. And we don't have agreement on all of these conditions, but that's why we're here for first reading. We need council to weigh in that all of these things apply. Essentially, our policies support such housing form. It's just the costs are significant.
Can I follow up? What is the setback to our lift station?
The front setback is a little complicated, so it's 0.15 meters, which is 6 inches, except for the front 7.5 meter length that's closest to the lift station has a 2-foot setback at grade, except that the upper 2 stories would project over that, and that's in order to accommodate the potential for the need to do excavation when we do wet well replacement.
Are we replacing a lift station on Buckley Avenue right now?
We are, yes.
That seems like a pretty big excavation pit.
I can comment.
Yeah, please.
Through the Mayor. Yeah, so it certainly is a significantly larger excavation. I think the thing to realize with this is if this property gets developed and we do ever have to replace Wilson Crescent lift station, we will not get the same level of standard, I guess, of a lift station that we would look to see on something like the Buckley. So Buckley's going to have a fenced-in compound, a drive-through access. It's going to have, it is, for one, significantly bigger in general because it takes in more flow. So it requires more space. But it is a consideration to give that we won't be able to get things that we would consider our design standard now. Potentially, if this development does go forward, it doesn't mean we can't replace, and it doesn't mean we can't maintain in the future. But it does definitely challenge us in terms of having space to lay down equipment, do further excavation, if we ever had to actually replace.
Or upgrade the size?
Or upgrade in size as well.
We would be limited in that.
We would be limited in that it would make it more difficult to do. So the key here is that we have been able to show that there is always an engineering solution, but it obviously comes at a cost. So, and what that cost is, we don't know at this point. The truth is, in our sewer master plan and all the future projections of population growth, there is no indication of when we will have to upsize that lift station. The capacity of the lift station itself is adequate for our future projections under the current zoning for the Denville area or for the Wilson Crescent area. So we don't have a data to know, we don't know when we will actually have to replace that station. In theory, you could keep that station running for a significant amount of time and be fine, provided we don't add more density.
Can you just add to that, the micro master plan for the Wilson Crescent area didn't propose new zoning, it proposed just the RM3 that's in there, correct?
Yeah, so it's already zoned as multiple residential. And there's no departure from that other than, the microplan proposes different varieties of density. Right now, we've got mostly townhouses and then some apartments in terms of zoning. So it's just a greater variation. I don't know, I don't think the microplan is gonna would recommend a significant increase in the density in the area. It's just the way the density is being allocated.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Councillor Pryor and then Councillor Rice.
Yeah, I just wondered, could you go back to the plan view there where the roads are and that?
Sorry.
I mean,
This one or?
No, keep going, not the, where you can see the roads. Well, I guess, I'm trying to look at the flood flow. And if you look at an aerial photo, you can see that Wilson Crescent comes straight for that house there. And Wilson Crescent is, Wilson Crescent's the road. Wilson Crescent is our flood flow. And putting a house right at the end of Wilson Crescent, how are you going to get flood flow out of that? I mean, it's just a question because somebody's going to be doing a lot of homework and spending money, and that's a red flag for me right there. And I'm happy that staff is trying to help landowners develop their land. I mean, I am happy. I thought when this came last time it was dead in the water, so I was kind of surprised to see it back. But I'm happy about that. To the flood flow, can you comment on that?
I can comment. So through the mayor, yeah, absolutely. It is a consideration given. It is something that we have talked about with the applicant. The applicant has shown a strong desire to proceed, even knowing the risks and knowing the fact that there is significant engineering challenges associated with it.
But can I just follow up on that?
Yep.
But when you talk to the owner and you say there's significant engineering challenges to the point where this might not proceed, he still wants to move forward?
Correct.
If I may, just after that, there is a number of studies that we recommend if this proceeds that haven't been done, and a flood study would be one of them. So this is we're just looking at a land use portion, and we're gonna, if this proceeds past the first reading, then the costs are gonna have to come in for the applicant to do to meet our requirements.
Councillor Rice.
Yeah, I was just wondering how this lot was created. And it seems like an orphan in a subdivision and became zoned. Is there any history of the lot?
Enhancement through you. There isn't a lot of detailed history. We have the records for when the lot was created and exchanged hands. It was created, I think, sometime in the late 60s. But I can't comment on whether it was an oversight. It appears to align quite precisely with the Wilson Crescent Road right-of-way width, but I can't comment beyond that.
Councillor Elliott and Councillor Kent.
Will this proposal require more staff time than we would spend on a single family dwelling?
Enhancement through you, yes. Correct. Given the challenges.
Councillor Kent.
You mentioned that there's the hydro lines that will run right above, excuse me, the roof line of the house. I'm wondering what kind of distance are we talking between roof line and hydro lines?
I don't know the exact distance between the roof line and the hydro lines, but the hydro pole is approximately 1.5 meters from the property line.
Has Hydro's had anything to say about that?
Yeah, there's some correspondence that's in the agenda package between the applicant and Hydro that talks about the need to meet all of the code requirements around the lines.
Elliot, oh, here we go. Anybody else have any questions?
Just to follow up on what Councillor Elliott said, so, I mean, I am worried about flood flow. And I'm worried that when we start delving into it, we're gonna find out, well, gee, we're gonna need all that property in front if we're gonna be working on this pump station, and we won't be able to park any cars there because we need that for parking our cars. It's right in a corner. So, and then you start digging into it a little more, and it's gonna be, I'm just worried we're gonna spend a lot of time, and we've got 3 staff members there now, and it's gonna come out to a, I don't think this is gonna work. I don't know, I'm just kind of worried about that.
If council does council have any more questions? I'm going to move first reading, and if it's seconded, we'll have a discussion. Seconded by Councillor Black and Wolf. I'll speak up briefly. I actually am going to support moving this to first reading. I appreciate it's a complicated file, and but I think every landowner has a right to pursue this through the process. I'm not worried about parking in front of it. There's other parts of the road our staff can park in. We need to correct that lift station or improve that lift station. That's something we have to do with lift stations all throughout the district, and we'll figure out a way. I don't want to prejudge this. I think there's still lots of challenges with this file, and second reading will come back to this council, will come back to the next council. But I think it forces, these bizarre parameters forces people to be creative. And I don't necessarily want to squelch that creativity right up front. I want to see, this is probably our first public tiny home, if you want to call it that, that's had to go through a process like this, of this size, on this type of lot. And I think it's a worthwhile thing to explore. I think without getting into the design elements of it, you have to be pretty creative to put a buildable space on that kind of floor plan. So, obviously, if it's going to cost the proponent some money to meet some of the parameters around fire hydrants and such, hydro, floodplain, those are all things that any land developer, anyone with a piece of land that wants to develop has to deal with. This one is just maybe a little more pronounced, but I think at this point I think it's worth starting its journey in the public process. Councillor Schwell.
Thanks. I agree with those sentiments. I think that sometimes when you're forced into those creative circumstances and having to deal with all that infrastructure around you, those creative solutions can be brought forward to other applications. So going through this challenging application is something that can, service other areas and perhaps provide insight into some of our policy, gives us an opportunity to look at different ways to do things, and creates creative ways of building smaller places to live, which I'm a big advocate of.
Anyone else want to speak to first reading? Councillor Pryor? Councillor Pryor?
Well, I'd like to put it to rest. I think it's just too complicated, and I don't know. We're giving this to the next council, so I'm just not going to support it. It's just it's too problematic. It's just way too problematic for my life.
Yeah, I am struggling with this. And I take the sentiments you expressed, Mayor Heinzman, and I generally am open to the concept of smaller homes and fitting them on unique small parcels. But this one has too many constraints for me. 2 of them in particular. One is that there's no parking on site, and I think going forward, I would be concerned about that with any of these types of applications. I understand there's a 10-foot parking stall, but for me, that, given the size of that, it might work for this particular proponent, but maybe not for the next owner. And we'll just spill the parking onto the street. And so that to me is a concern, particularly in this area, as we identified in our the micro-study. That's a narrow road, and parking on the street is going to be a challenge regardless. But the main thing is the proximity to infrastructure and all the difficulties that creates with our infrastructure and the restrictions that it places on us in the future as that area might densify, as we might want to rework things. And so I cannot support first reading.
Yeah, I do like the concept of tiny homes, but I think the biggest problem I have for this lot is the 6-inch setback in terms of the rail line. And I know nationally municipalities are looking at setting standards for setbacks from rail. So with that and the other constraints, I don't support first reading.
Anyone else want to comment on this? Councillor Kent.
Yeah, I've struggled with this for a while, but I think one of the key pieces for me, and I can appreciate staff's comments about we can accommodate with the infrastructure of a lift station if we have to, but we shouldn't really have to. And we have talked for quite a while now about planning for density in Wilson Crescent area, so I know that's going to come eventually, and it will densify, and I think we will need to upgrade that lift station to a much larger size at some point. And I don't want us to be fettered by having that property adjacent to us and restricting what we can do with our lift station. So I'm not in favor.
Can I get clarification? Because I thought I heard staff say that the lift station has the capacity to meet the current zoning, which is all multifamily apartments and townhomes already. So we don't anticipate, even with the growth that could be there in the current zoning, which is pretty dense, needing to upgrade that. I just, because what I hear from Councilor Kent was opposite to what I thought I heard staff say, that the lift station, so just, can you clarify that?
Yes, that's correct. The way that it is currently zoned, so not the way it's currently built, but the way that it's currently zoned to be built, that density, it can handle that density according to our studies.
On that, is that the new Wilson Crescent zone or the old Wilson Crescent zone?
Well, the current zone already has multifamily throughout the whole area on Wilson Crescent.
Except that at the north end, there's a large lot at the north end that could have 4 times the density on it.
But it's already zoned. I think the north end is zoned RM3, so it's one of our denser
So in the existing zone, it works.
It is confusing because it's not the existing density that's there, it's the existing density associated with the maximum zoning, which is already in place essentially. And the capacity is there for that density that's already zoned for. Unless it all gets rezoned to RM3 from RM2, but we're looking at mixed housing anyway, so I can't see the density increasing that much more in that area, and that's what I think I heard staff say.
That's right. Could I clarify one more thing?
Please.
That's kind of relevant to this conversation? Is I know the point was raised about this being such a small proposal and a lot of staff time being spent on it. In practice, these small proposals always take a lot of time, so we have to accommodate them.
Yeah, I personally don't want to get in the habit of sort of saying small, complicated, therefore we're not going to address them, or at least entertain them and let them go through the process and let them have an ability to prove themselves, I guess. Councillor Pryor, then Councillor Stoll.
Yes, with relaxations to every sideline setback and parking and height. Yeah, I mean, there's just, yes, we're entertaining it, but I mean, it's got a reduction in setbacks on every side. We got CN saying, ooh, don't let something go in there. I mean, I'm trying to be sympathetic. You know, if the planning department really thinks this is a good thing, then I'll support it.
Can I, go ahead, John.
I didn't say we think it's a really good thing. I just said that, I just said that these proposals, the smaller the lot, usually the more complex it gets, and you know, it's not only attributed to big developments. It's
You think
also
it's going to be a good thing?
we definitely think there's challenges with developing this lot, and you know, we're looking at the applicant to see whether they're going to be up for that challenge.
We just like the challenges.
Yeah, I thought I was on yours.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. Through Mayor Heinzman, they do have a parking spot, do they not? One small park, it's a reduced size parking lot, but they do have a parking spot. Is that correct?
Correct. So the parking stall dimensions, and this is from the applicant, is 8 feet by 15 feet. I believe our standard stall is 9 feet by 19 feet.
Yeah, but it does accommodate a small car. Teeny tiny house and a teeny tiny car. Yeah, thank you. So it's not no parking, as Councillor Race.
It's a reduced stall.
It's a reduced stall though.
Smaller parking.
Yeah, smaller parking, which I'm okay with. And as has been said, when we built our tiny home, I had a lot of challenges because because of the previous infrastructure challenges. And I think, as you say, I mean, I feel like we took a ton of staff time because the bylaws didn't quite allow us to build what we needed to build. And even just building exactly a laneway house, we still had to change bylaws and look at complications. And if we're asking for a diversity of housing and smaller type housing, I think that we are going to have to see challenging applications like this using smaller lots. And I'm interested, it's only first reading, I'm interested in hearing the comments, I'm interested in seeing how the applicant adapts to all of these challenges. I think it's great, sometimes we can learn great things for our bylaws just by going through these applications.
Can you clarify exactly, I mean, CN doesn't have a right to say no, they can comment, but they don't have a jurisdiction necessarily. This is close to the railway corridor, but the railway corridor is quite wide there, wider than your average corridor there, is it not?
If I may agree, Mayor, I'm not sure if it's wider than the average corridor. In this case, the rail line is located more on the other side of the corridor, and we do have development, including new development, all along that line. So we would be looking at mitigating the impacts of rail line through further covenant that's with regards to noise, as well as improvements or higher standards on the building side.
CNN didn't say we recommend you don't approve this. They just outlined some concerns that they hope that they'd like us to address. Correct?
It's been through you. All the correspondence is in there. So there's an email from CN directly to the applicant that says that proposes a solution that would resolve CN, but their original referral response was that they were not in support.
Yeah, they can issue non-support, but they can't say no. Any more questions or comments? We have it moved and seconded. Roxanne, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Elliott, Kent, and Race opposed. Motion carries.
You got it.
Moving on in the agenda. That included all those conditions of adoption, of course. Moving on in the agenda. 8B1, District of Squamish Advisory Design Panel, Bylaw 2022-64, 2013 Amendment, Bylaw 2628, 2018. And there's a few, do you want to outline them?
I don't have to if the council's comfortable with it.
Council, any questions with the modifications? The main one being is adding someone with public art or art. We used to have, when I was on the ADP, we used to have someone from the Arts Council on, and I thought there was quite a bit of value they provided to the process. So with that, does someone want to move the bylaw? Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Chappelle. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Next up is the District of Squamish Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw number 2639, 2018. There's a recommended motion that was given first 3 readings.
Mayor and Council, my name is David Kinaga, engineering. Today we're looking for first, second, and third readings of the Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw. This was presented to the Committee of the Whole on October 9th. And the only thing that has changed since we presented last week was that we reinserted a map of road classifications into the road section that somehow did not make the update as we were going through it. Nothing else has changed since then.
Page 202, if...
In the agenda.
Yep.
For those who maybe weren't at the presentation, some key points specifically of the update to the bylaw was that we completed a comparison with the Master Municipal Construction Documents, or the MMCD, which is essentially a standard set of construction specifications and drawings that we default to. And so what we've done is we've essentially taken out any reference or any duplication of the MMCD in the bylaw, and so we specifically only put supplementary specifications. This makes it significantly more efficient to read through, fairly more concise and clear and easier to get through and administer. We also resolved conflicts with the zoning bylaw where they were both referencing the same thing, so we pulled out items and ensured that they were not in conflict with each other. Overall, we completed general tweaks to our design standards to improve overall design. Specifically on the different sections, we clarified requirements for the stormwater section, environmental controls such as oil grit separators, infiltration methods, made it much more clear that it's required to be applied where possible, as opposed to having it buried in the back of the bylaw. It now is much more upfront in the center. We also updated the road and active transportation portions of the bylaw, reducing minimum laneway widths and driveway widths with the ultimate goal to increase safety. We also added 2 new sections, one on steep slopes, as that's becoming quite a bit more prevalent in development here today, as well as a section on dikes as well. We also better defined our boulevard section and the street tree requirements with Bear Smart language, as well as specifying what we want to see in the boulevard. It was a little bare bones before, and we moved it out of the road section and put it into the street tree section, which is just a more appropriate place. We've also increased or improved the roadway lighting standard, warming up the light based on user feedback, public feedback, as well as more recent studies on the health benefits and the various environmental benefits to a warmer light. And that's the end of my presentation.
Any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'm happy to move first 3 readings, seconded by Councillor Elliott. I'll just speak briefly to this. Council directed staff to bring back sort of a greening of the subdivisions and development control bylaw. I think there's still some more work to be done on that front, but this takes a good bite out of those initiatives. This is the type of bylaw that needs to have new eyes and reflect best practices on a fairly regular basis. So it's something that you want to continually be modifying and updating as new theories about infiltration and road widths and all that sort of comes into play. So it is a live document. So I'm glad that we've been able to do this sort of modest rejigging of the bylaw and bring it up to speed with some greening and more up-to-date processes. Particularly, I think the stormwater infiltration piece, I think makes this even stronger. The steep slopes, we've seen some unfortunate treatment of steep slope developments in the district, and so this starts to help us get policies and direction so we don't make those mistakes again in the future, perhaps. And I think some of the lighting and widths, roadway widths and treeing of boulevards and downtown is really important too. So good step. I think this is something the next council needs to continue to put their lens on and update it as needed. Anyone else want to speak to this? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next up, District of Squamish Tree Management Bylaw number 2640/2018.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Caroline Ashikian. I am a professional biologist and environmental coordinator with the district. I'm here today with Chris Wickham, Director of Engineering. Today's presentation is to present the Tree Management Bylaw, Soils Management Bylaw, Environmental Reserve Fund Bylaw, and companion bylaw amendments for first 3 readings. In Council's 2016 strategic plan, Council identifies the rewrite of the site alteration bylaw as a strategic priority action item. The site alteration bylaw currently regulates tree removal and soil movement within the district. It's within a municipality's legislative authority to regulate the removal of trees and the movement of soils under the Community Charter and the Local Government Act. There are many reasons to regulate this, primarily the protection of our green infrastructure and natural assets, and to prevent degradation of our natural ecosystems. However, the existing bylaw is both vague and ambiguous, it lacks clarity, it's outdated, and provides for limited cost recovery, leading to inadequate resourcing to administer. So the objective of the project was to update and improve the current bylaw, create clarity on guidelines and standards to achieve cost recovery for bylaw administration as well as for damage to district roads. Staff reviewed tree and soils regulations across 30 municipalities in developing these bylaws. Staff developed a comprehensive public and stakeholder engagement strategy based on the IAP2 participation spectrum of Involve, which was conducted between May and July of last year. This included a public open house, a public workshop, an online survey, and a stakeholder-focused session with representation from land development, qualified professionals such as civil engineering and environmental, and quarry and contractor representatives. The feedback received through the engagement process was summarized in an engagement and feedback summary report, and a great amount of positive feedback was received in support of the bylaws and on the benefit of the bylaws for the sustainable development of the community. Overall, there were more respondents in favor of the bylaws than not. Feedback was also received on how the bylaws could be improved, which served as the basis for key revisions that were made to the bylaws. The following couple of slides describe the tree management bylaw, along with scenarios and a description of revisions made since the October 9th Committee of the Whole meeting where Council requested a few minor revisions. So for removal of trees greater than 20 centimeters, a permit is required. There are exemptions to this, which include residential properties less than 1 acre in size. This residential exemption, however, does not apply if the tree that is proposed to be removed is a significant tree, which is defined as greater than 80 centimeters in diameter, or if the tree to be removed is in an environmentally sensitive area or on a steep slope. Hazard trees are also exempt from the bylaw, subject to a hazard tree report. And permit fees are $150 plus $5 per tree proposed to be cut. The bylaw establishes tree replacement criteria, and there are 3 ways to achieve this. First, for every tree removed, trees must be replaced at a ratio of 2 to 1 for trees, that is, trees that are greater than 20 centimeters, and 6 to 1 for significant trees, which are greater than 80 centimeters. However, tree replacement is required only up to a tree density target of 50 trees per net developable hectare, which essentially establishes an upper limit or cap for the required tree replacement. Net developable hectare is the land, it's defined as the land available for development, but does not include parks, roads, utilities, or environmentally sensitive areas. The second way to achieve the tree replacement criteria is if the tree density target can be achieved through the retention of existing trees once the tree removal is complete. If that can be achieved, then no tree replacement is required. And the third is if tree density cannot be achieved through retention of trees or replanting of trees, then the landowner can contribute $250 per replacement tree to an environmental reserve fund. The bylaw to establish this reserve fund is before council today for first 3 readings in tandem with these bylaws. This slide shows 4 scenarios. The first scenario along the first row is for a greenfield site, so a forested site of 1 hectare in size. So on this, in this situation, in this example, there are 500 trees on the site plus 50 significant trees. The owner wishes to clear everything and leave 3 significant trees. The permit fee is a flat fee of $150 plus $5 per tree removed, which is 547 trees that are being removed. So that's $2,885 for a permit fee. And 3 significant trees are being retained. And the significant trees count as a credit of 3 trees each. So the tree retention is the equivalent of 9 trees. With a replacement ratio at 2:1 for each tree and 6:1 for each significant tree, that equates to greater than 1,200 replacement trees. However, with a tree density target, this is capped at 50. Subtract the trees being retained, which is 9, which leaves 41 trees required for replacement. So in this example, they would have to replant 41 trees, or they have an option to provide cash in lieu at $250 per tree, which is $10,250, or a combination of replanting and cash in lieu. In the second row, it's a scenario where the site is previously developed, such as a mall or a historically disturbed site, and it's 1 hectare in size. There are 5 trees on the site, plus 2 significant trees. They wish to remove all the trees. The permit fee is $150 plus $5 per tree removed, which is $185. No trees are being retained in this example. And a tree replacement requirement is based on a replacement ratio of 2:1 for each of the 5 trees being removed, so that's 10 trees, and 6:1 for the significant trees, that's 12. So for a total of 22 trees that require replacement, or an option of cash in lieu at $250 for each of the 22 trees, which is $5,500. The third scenario is a 1-acre residential site with 1 big tree, 1 significant tree in the yard they wish to remove. They're not retaining any trees on site. They would normally be exempt because it's a residential site, 1 acre or less in size, but the tree they wish to remove is a significant tree. The permit fee is $150 plus 5, replacement of 6 trees required for the significant tree, or cash in lieu of $1,500. In the fourth scenario, a 1-acre residential site, there are 10 trees, 2 significant trees. They wish to remove 5 trees. No permit is required. They're not removing any large or significant trees. To address Council's requests for revisions in the October 9th Committee of the Whole, the following revisions have been made. Staff have expanded the criteria for who can assess hazard trees, deleted a clause stating that replacement trees may be required upon removal of hazard trees, made a revision so that tree replacement plans only need to be prepared by a qualified professional when tree replacement is greater than 10 trees. Same for confirmation of planting. This only needs to be carried out by a qualified professional when tree replacement is greater than 10 trees. And removed specification of tree type for replacement trees. So replacement trees can be any native tree. Other revisions of a minor nature have also been made to ensure that the bylaw is within the district's jurisdictional and legal authority. Also, to address comments from the Committee of the Whole meeting last week, staff would like to confirm that the community charter states that a municipality cannot restrict use or density that is otherwise permitted under a zoning bylaw. And this bylaw is consistent with the community charter as the authorizing legislation. Moving on to the soils bylaw, a permit is required for moving volumes of soil greater than 30 cubic meters per site per year. This threshold is approximately 3 dump truck loads of soil. Anything less would not require a permit. However, this exemption does not apply to floodways, environmentally sensitive areas, or steep slopes. Permit fees include a flat rate of $150 plus a volumetric fee of 30 cents per cubic meter, and the fees are capped at 100,000 cubic meters. For preload, the fees are charged only on the deposit of the soil, not charged again on the removal. The maintenance and security fees that are flat fees based on soil volume, as shown in the table on the screen, and for volumes greater than 40,000 cubic meters, the security shall be 30 cents per cubic meter. To describe a few scenarios under this proposed bylaw, starting with a deposit of 30 cubic meters. This is roughly 3 truckloads. Normally this would be exempt, but it's in this example it's proposed on to be deposited on a steep slope. Fees are volumetric, 30 cents per cubic meter, which is $9 plus a permit fee of $150. The next scenario is for a deposit of 40,000 cubic meters of soil. This is roughly 4,000 trucks of soil. The fee would be $12,000 plus $150. In the third scenario, it's for the deposit of 100,000 cubic meters of soil. It's roughly 10,000 truckloads, and the fee would be $30,000. And in the fourth scenario, anything greater than 100,000 cubic meters, there's a fee cap in place, so the fees would not go beyond $30,000. To address Council's requests for revisions in the October 9th Committee of the Whole, the following revisions have been made. An exemption has been added for businesses operating under the Mines Act, for example, quarries, and other businesses which stockpile materials as part of routine operations, for example, landscape operator yards. An exemption has been added for restoration and enhancement projects, if done for the purpose of environmental enhancement. And clarification was included that a permit is not required if works are covered by a district servicing agreement. Other revisions of a minor nature have also been made to ensure that the bylaw is within the district's jurisdictional and legal authority. There are additional bylaw implications. The first is establishment of an environmental reserve fund via a bylaw, with future funds going towards habitat restoration and enhancement, potentially land acquisition for habitat preservation. Other bylaw implications include amendments to the fees and charges bylaw for fees, municipal ticket information bylaw in relation to ticketing and enforcement, and to the notice enforcement bylaw, again, for ticketing and enforcement. There is also a requirement for provincial ministerial approval of the soils bylaw. As a result, the amendments to the latter 3 bylaws are being presented as separate amendments, each for trees and for soils. This is being done in anticipation that adoption of the companion bylaw amendments for soils may likely happen at a date later than the adoption of the companion bylaw amendments for trees. These bylaws, these proposed bylaws are aligned with Council's strategic objectives. They address the district's needs as a growing community while remaining conservative across other municipalities and incorporate feedback from stakeholders. Staff wish to note there are several policies in the district's current official community plan supporting these bylaws. You can see the policies listed both in this slide and the next slide. They're also listed in the staff report. I'll only read a couple as bolded on the screen. So pursuing a creation of an environmental conservation fund, protecting and maintaining the integrity of green infrastructure and sensitive ecosystems, encouraging the preservation and management of forested areas and tree stands, controlling site alteration activities through robust regulations, and prioritizing the retention of healthy, mature vegetation during redevelopment. The recommendation before Council today is that Council approve the following resolution, that the District of Squamish give first 3 readings to the following bylaws and amendment bylaws: the Tree Management Bylaw, the Soils Management Bylaw, the Environmental Reserve Fund Bylaw, amendment to the Fees and Charges Bylaw both for soils and for trees, amendment to the Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw both for soils and for trees, and amendment to the Notice Enforcement Bylaw both for soils and for trees.
Thank you. Councillor Race and Councillor Kent and Councillor Pratt.
Thank you. With respect to the trees bylaw, because it was my question that prompted that check into it, I looked again at the charter, and so I think, maybe just confirm if I'm correct or not, but the way we fall into the provisions of the charter is because we cannot say no if somebody wants to cut down a tree. They have to get a permit, which deals with fees and deals with replanting. But we basically cannot say no. I think, is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you.
Who was next? Councillor Kent, then Councillor Pratt, then Councillor.
Just a quick question. You said that you can it can replace with any native tree. So for instance, if they were to take out Douglas fir, for instance, they could replace that with a deciduous tree like an alder or something like that?
That's correct. Through you, Mayor, that's correct.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same question. So you can take out a big tree and put in a little tiny tree. Where do you plant them, the trees? So you've got 300 trees to plant.
Through the mayor, that is up to the proponent through their QP if it's greater than 10 trees to present a planting plan. We specify that we'd like to see them in corridors and clumps and adjacent to public lands that are forested and that sort of thing, but it is up to them to be.
So you'll have some idea, give somebody some direction on where they may go to plant them, then staff will give them an idea?
No, through the mayor, it would be up to the proponent to tell us where they want them.
And then one of the things that I didn't bring up last time when we talked about this is when you see the end dumps coming in from Vancouver, bringing in load after load of unknown fill and dumping it, now we can go and, subject to having staff, stop some of those trucks and say, where's your permit?
Correct.
Perfect. And so I didn't see what the fine was for somebody coming in with a load or I'm looking forward to seeing that kind of stuff stopped. Anyway, and then...
maybe speak to where...
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, just a point of clarification. In the bylaw, there is a requirement to place the permit in a public location where it's visible from a road. There's no requirement for the actual haulers to carry a copy of the permit in their truck.
Okay. And then, so the conservation fund, could that, I was hoping that some of that could be used for bylaw going after these trucks.
Through the mayor, the conservation fund is very specific, that it be used for restoration of habitat or acquisition of land to protect habitat. The fees, however, have been determined based on a 1.5 full-time equivalent staff. One of those to administer the bylaw, and half to share with the planning department, specifically for bylaw enforcement, to work together.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
At committee of the whole, Mike Nelson mentioned the idea of like sometimes it's keeping the unhealthy trees, so the nature trees, that is more important than, and I didn't see anywhere where we sort of incorporated the importance of nature trees, which might be the ones that are sort of old and not healthy.
Did you have that conversation with Mr. Nelson?
We did. Through the mayor. That's a tricky one. We worked with him on that one. We did soften the language somewhat. However, we also need to guard against all of the retained trees being diseased trees are about to become hazard trees next year and be removed. So we did soften the language a little bit in order to, we hope, strike a middle ground. And certainly in ESAs and in other areas where a much more detailed environmental review is done that's sort of outside the scope of this bylaw, they would be emphasized. Well,
And then just in terms of replacement trees, do we need to clarify that they can't be bear attracting in this bylaw, or is that
covered in another bylaw?
did we address the bear attractants?
Through you, Mayor, that's not addressed in this bylaw. I do believe we have another bylaw, the district has another bylaw that addresses this. This is something that staff can look into.
if we're giving it third reading? Anyway.
I think it's appropriately in a wildlife attractant bylaw of some kind.
Yeah.
And we were just going to confirm that it is in there. If it isn't in there, that's, I think, the bylaw that needs to be amended to include that.
Okay, and then my final question is...
Do you want to add to that? Hold on, Councilor.
Yes, please, thank you, through you, Mayor. If wildlife attractant vegetation is not addressed in the bylaw, then it is in a policy. It is in one or the other, and it's information that is provided to applicants on a regular basis already.
Okay.
Keep going.
Okay, so now I'm in the accompanying bylaws around ticketing and fines. The ones about unlawful dust, it says the fine is $1,000. Is that per day? Or is that in total? We had a lot of problems last summer with people not managing their dust, and like a one-time may not be that disincentive.
Okay, thank you, through you, Mayor. Typically, our municipal ticket information bylaw, the violations can be charged per offense per day. So it would be once per day. It's up to the district's discretion whether the fines are applied in that manner.
Okay. On page 387, we list the fine as $1,000 for cut, removal, damage, death to a tree. And then on page 392, which is in the notice enforcement bylaw, or sorry, 393, they're all listed at 500. Is that, am I missing something?
I'm, through the mayor, I'm not an expert in the difference between the municipal ticketing information and the notice enforcement bylaws. However, there are two different mechanisms with different levels of evidence required, etc., and they have their own governing legislation, and one is essentially capped at $500 and the other at $1,000. That's why you see the two different bylaws. It gives us choices in how to enforce. We also have other choices, including suspending a permit or issuing a stop work order. Often those are the more painful. You just stop everything, everybody stands around and looks at each other until you get a water truck here, for example, and people notice.
Okay, thanks.
That's it. Any other questions on any of these bylaws? There's actually multiple bylaws in there, so thanks for your report. Yeah, with another question, Councillor Riss.
Thank you. On the soils bylaw, the cap of 100,000 cubic meters per permit, is that an annual? If you had a project that required 300,000 cubic meters of fill, do you need 1 permit or 3 permits?
Through you, Mayor, it would be per permit. So if the applicant is able to put enough information and detail together to foresee and plan ahead what the details would be around managing that volume and magnitude of soil, then the permit could be issued for that amount and it would be under 1 permit.
If it was phased separately, I got that one.
I don't see any more hands. There's a recommended motion that we give first 3 readings to the tree management bylaw, number 40, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent. Maybe I'll just speak once to all of them, because I think they're all supportable. This is a long time coming. I know when we brought in the site alteration permit bylaw, I think it was right at the beginning of my first term, so 12, 13 years ago. It was a reaction to the fact that a whole bunch of environmental bylaws sort of failed at the end of a term, and then we were left with this big gap. And so it was never really a well thought out bylaw. It had all sorts of challenging aspects to it. So this is a long time coming and sort of getting us to a point where we're doing what we can under the legislation to try to retain some of our treescape, retain some of why we all live here, as well as pay for our, help pay for some of the infrastructure that's impacted by the movement of soils and that type of thing around the community. It beats up our roads quite a bit. So I think this is a long time coming, and I'm happy to support the bylaws. Again, likely going to be tested over the years and tweaked and modified in the future, but happy to support them. I've got Councillor Chappelle and Councillor Elliott.
Thanks. I just had one other question. I'm wondering about dredging. So I did just, we have a lot of dredging projects that are going up. What happens to dredge?
Through you, Mayor, they would be subject to this bylaw. That's right.
Okay, so if they deposit it anywhere, it would be subject to the same cost and expense? Even municipal? And what about municipal? When we're dredging and depositing soils?
Through you, Mayor, municipal works are exempt from the bylaw.
We pay ourselves.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
I'm happy to support first 3 readings, but I think this is one of those bylaws that will require monitoring so that we can see if it's actually having the impact we intended. I mean, what we're trying to do is preserve our tree canopy, not incent people to cut it all down, because we know space is limited for replanting. So I'm not sure the goal is to necessarily always build up a big environmental fund for me. It's more about making sure we have trees. And I think that's what our community is after too. So I think we need to look at, after a year has gone by, how this looks in terms of enforcement, in terms of what people are doing with this bylaw, whether everyone's just cutting everything down still, or whether there's an effort to preserve and make sure over time we've got that balance right. But happy to see this go forward.
Any other comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, I'm looking for a motion to give first 3 readings to the soil management bylaw 2641, moved by Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Kent. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. District of Squamish Environmental Reserve bylaw number 2642, first 3 readings, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. District of Squamish fees and charges bylaw 2012-2007 amendment bylaw number 2643, 2018. Be given first 3 readings, moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. District of Squamish fees and charges bylaw, amendment bylaw 2644, tree management, moved by, first three readings, moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. And District of Squamish Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw, number 1832, 2004, Amendment Bylaw 2645, 2018, Soils Management. First three readings, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Pryor. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. District of Squamish Municipal Ticket Information Bylaw, number 1832, 2004, Amendment Bylaw 2646, 2018, Tree Management. First three readings, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. I haven't duplicated any yet, have I? District of Squamish Notice Enforcement Bylaw, number 2418, 2015, Amendment Bylaw Soils Management 2647, 2018. First three readings, moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Black-and-Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. And District of Squamish Notice Enforcement Bylaw 2418, 2015, Amendment Bylaw Trees Management 2648, 2018. Be given first three readings, moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Kent. All those in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Next up, adoption, District of Squamish 3rd Avenue Road Closure Bylaw. Move it be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by, I'll second that. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. District of Squamish Zoning Bylaw 2200-2011 Amendment Bylaw 37781 Cleveland Avenue. And there's a recommended motion that the mayor and corporate officer execute the land development agreement and the bylaw be adopted. Any questions on that one? Moved by Councillor Race, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Thank you. And District of Squamish 5-year financial plan bylaw, number 2589, 2018, amendment bylaw 2631, 2018 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, motion carries. Does council want to have a quick break, 5-minute break? Why don't we do that? Thank you. We're in recess for 5 minutes. We are back in our regular business meeting and we are on item 9A1, development permit number 419, 38148 Cleveland Avenue.
Okay, so good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carrie Hamilton. I'm a planner here at the District of Squamish, and I'm presenting to you today development permit 419, located at 38148 Cleveland Avenue. So, to staff's knowledge, this Cleveland Avenue lot has been used as an informal parking lot for adjacent commercial and residential buildings, and this is the first development permit received for the lot. This application was received in April of 2016 and is to be considered against both the 2010 official community plan and the 2016 C4 zone, which does not take into account the downtown Cleveland Avenue changes adopted in March of this year. DP 419 falls within Development Permit Area 2 for downtown in the 2010 official community plan. Surrounding businesses are all zoned downtown commercial and include InBiz to the north and a 4-story mixed-use building to the south. The development is directly across from DP 417 Cleveland Gardens, which is currently in construction. So the development is proposing the construction of a 5-story mixed-use residential commercial development consisting of 154.7 meters squared ground floor commercial with the potential for 1 to 3 commercial units. The main residential entrance fronts onto Cleveland Avenue and provides access to 12 residential units on floors 2 and 4 and 4 private rooftop patios on the 5th floor. All parking is accessed by Loggers Lane at the rear, and all residential units will be provided with 1 parking space. All 4 required commercial parking spaces will be cash in lieu payment to the district. The rear parking area includes stamped concrete surface treatment, vine planting of the existing adjacent walls, and trees to both green and visually improve the rear area. The on-site design includes a separate pedestrian entrance to the building from the rear sidewalk. More detail about the development can be found in attachment 1 to this report, including a table of how the project compares to all DPA2 guidelines. DPA 419 was presented to the advisory design panel 3 times on the following dates, which is basically one every year. So due to the location of this development facing both Cleveland Avenue and Loggers Lane, and being an infill development between 2 very different building forms, the development raised many questions and concerns amongst members and posed challenges to the architects themselves, which played a role in this development permit review length. So notable changes have been made throughout all 3 ADP meetings, and they're listed on this slide. And further visuals can be found in Schedule B of this report if you'd like to follow along as I list a few of these. So there were a number of changes to the building frontage material. They were changed and modernized. There was changes to the residential lobby and the ground floor sidewall treatment. And that's to do with the fact that the adjacent north building is actually set back from the property line. So there was a number of concerns with having a very solid wall. There were a number of reiterations of that sidewall that were done. There was a removal of the separate rear garbage, which was in the rear. And then there was visual and landscape elements enhanced at the rear, facing Loggers Lane. There was also interior wall changes to the interior side, which are the firewalls. And we also set back the building, took some of the walls out for that setback on the second and fourth story, second to the fourth story. We also added rooftop overhangs, added to rain coverage, and the roof surface treatment was changed. So this project was posted to the district's development showcase webpage, and the district received no request for a public information meeting, and no public meeting was held. Staff's recommendation is for council to authorize development permit 419, subject to the provision of landscape bonding, the registration of a flood covenant and a flood hazard report on title, and the provision of $24,000 cash in lieu in place of the 4 commercial parking stalls. An alternative recommendation is that council not authorize this development permit and refer it back to staff. Thank you.
Questions for clarification purposes, Councillor Chappelle.
Did we not set, or does this meet, maybe I should say, does this meet the regulations for the new workspace? I'm wondering why we don't get second floor commercial on here.
So through you, Mayor, this application came in before those regulations were in place, which was March of 2018. And this application came in April of 2016. So they have to apply to the current zone of that application date. And so that we cannot ask them to apply to the current zone of today.
So your hand over here?
Yeah.
Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. I really like the 3D effect. It's great. We're nailing it on all the little developments, but we've got to make sure those bigger ones start doing the same thing. Can you show me what they did with the garbage? I remember the garbage being, there was a problem with the garbage in the back alley. I remember that at the ADP.
So through you, Mayor, if you look, I don't have an image, but if you look at Schedule B, I've provided a table, and it actually has all of the images, and it shows you from the different 3 iterations of the ADPs, and you'll see, I believe on the second chart of the rear photo, you'll see that what that garbage used to look like.
And the first slide that you opened up with, the street view you had there, the next one, it showed the parked cars. That's the old movie theater. That's a historical photo.
Councillor Chappelle.
Thank you. Garbage was removed from the back. Where is the storage for the apartments and garbage going to be located for recycling and garbage?
Through you, Mayor, sorry, to clarify, the garbage location was a separate building, and that was removed. The garbage location is now inside the building, so there is still garbage receptacles and adequate space for the units.
Storage?
There is no storage for this particular building.
Can I ask one more question? Yep. If this gets turned down, do they have to reapply under the new guidelines?
If I may. They meet all the development permit area guidelines. There isn't a variance associated with this application. They meet the zoning, they meet the guidelines. If council was wanting some changes, we could explore that with the applicant, but we would suggest that then perhaps refer it back to staff rather than turn it down. There's not a reason to turn it down.
Thank you.
Australia.
I know that a lot of these buildings on Cleveland will do their parking in lieu, they'll pay the fees. Do we have a sense from our parking utilization study how many times we can take parking in lieu before we've created a greater issue on the roads? Right now we know there's capacity based on our study, but do we have a sense of how many commercial parking spots we can take cash for before we've created a problem?
I think, sorry, through the chair, I think the best way of doing that is to redo that parking utilisation study again. I think it's very difficult to try and extrapolate from applications as we go through. I think it's better to just repeat, probably 2020, repeat that, that utilisation study.
Any questions, council? Seeing none, there was a recommended motion, moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Kent. Councillor Pryor, do you want to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised when I saw this because it's 3 years since we first saw this. And you wonder what happens to them, and lo and behold, they sneak through, and here it is. So happy to see it get through all the process. Move forward.
Councillor Schwab.
Yes, I am concerned about the lot. It was our old policy, and I appreciate that they've come in under the, but we can't just keep on developing our main street and say, oh, it was our old policy. I think we have to ask for professional workspace. And just, this really concerns me with the residentialization of our downtown core. We want people to work downtown. We don't have other places for professionals to work. And we continue developing Cleveland Avenue without professional office space. So I'm not going to be supporting this application. I know it meets all our guidelines, but I can't support any more residentialization of areas that should have second floor office space and 2 floors of residential up above. It's a small lot. It's going to be making a lot, it's economically viable to have professional office space in this area. So I won't be supporting this application.
Councillor Rees and Councillor Pryor.
Thank you. I like this, and actually the thing I particularly like about this this design is the treatment of the Loggers Lane side of the building, and I think that's something that we want to watch for in the future, because it's a bit odd in the sense that buildings up front on Cleveland Avenue, back on Loggers Lane, and so there is no back alley to take care of all the servicing and so forth. And Loggers Lane to me is potentially a very attractive street if we do it right. And this, I think, lends itself to that. So very supportive of this.
Councillor Pryor.
Just Councillor Chappelle's point on the second floor office and that, we have done assessment of office needs, and we are meeting that, aren't we, with what's going on now?
With the changes that we've introduced recently, we are going to be, we should be on target with the downtown neighborhood plan, which informed our employment line study. As Carrie said, this is probably the last application, I'm pretty sure it is the last application we have. That's a DP stage that it came in under the old zoning bylaw.
Yeah, because I know the one on the Pac West site gave us more second floor office than was required. So, I mean, but I was thinking that we were going along getting enough second floor now, right?
We've got the bylaws in place now.
I think the challenge is people will only build when, like, it's in theory now. It's not actually in practice now. So the actual bricks and mortar are yet to come. Councillor Schwab.
Thanks. We have 100 years to plan for. These buildings are lasting 100 years. So it's not just about whether we have enough for now, it's about whether we have enough for the future. And we are densifying, and we have deep problems with people commuting to work. So you cannot build commercial ground floor without second floor office space in your downtown on your main street and continue to residentialize. No other town has done this. And the ones that have have lost economic opportunities, they've lost viability, and they've lost the ability for the professionals to work in their own town. So it's great to say it's just our old policy, but I think we have to actually start doing a better job of making sure that we're meeting policy and having all of our, not the old policy, but we have an opportunity to say, no, we want some second floor office space or work live space.
Through you, Mary. May I just clarify that we as staff do not have the opportunity to ask for that because of the application date of this?
I do.
Okay.
Council, any more comments? I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Chappelle opposes. Motion carries. Next up, we have nuisance resolution at 38140 3rd Avenue. Does staff want to speak to this briefly?
Only if you want to.
Why don't I move the staff recommendation? Is there a seconder? Second by Councillor Race. Been going on for a long time. We need to move it along. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Super long time.
Super long time. Now, item 10A is the consent agenda. I'm looking if there's anyone who would like to pull something from the consent agenda, if they want to either amend it or vote against it. Seeing nothing. Yep.
It's just under correspondence. D3. Just pull that for a second.
Minister Venus, okay, we'll pull that one from the consent agenda. Anything else that should be pulled from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Moved by Councillor Pryor, seconded by Councillor Race. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. That item will be done under 12. Councillor Race?
Sure, fine.
We are on late items. 11, downtown bridge crossing land exchange. Okay, we're going to move on while we get Neil. Recommended motions from this afternoon's committee of the whole meeting that the community amending contribution policy be approved, and we don't need that second part. Moved by Councillor Elliott, seconded by Councillor Pryor. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Chit-chat.
That's why I saw Gary buying the
Councillor Race, Minister Trevina's correspondence.
Yeah, this was related to the meeting we had with the minister at UBCM, and Mayor Kopp from Williams Lake was also supposed to be at that meeting, and last minute had a conflict, and so we spoke to him before the meeting. But his concern was the BCR mandate letter, BCRP mandate letter, which is referred to in the letter. I only told it just to ensure that maybe we could forward that to him, because I don't see him as being one of the addressees, because he wasn't at that meeting.
So a motion to forward the letter to
Mayor Kopp, Williams
I'll
Lake.
second that. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Pending. Motion carries. We are back to the downtown bridge crossing land exchange.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Neil Plum, Manager of Real Estate. I'm here with Nat Gill, Portfolio Administrator. So we are here tonight to obtain Council's authorization to enter into a tripartite agreement, pronounce that properly, that would allow the acquisition of land that are necessary to build the proposed bridge across CN Rail at Highway 99 and Clark Drive, and then to also get district landowner consent for applications for permitting on district lands in that area to facilitate the construction of the new access. So the proposed bridge crossing into downtown, it's identified back in our 2009 Downtown Squamish Transportation Plan. It's been identified in the multimodal transportation plan, and has also been identified as a key part of the waterfront landing project, including the bridge and upgrades to Laurel Drive. So in order to get the land to build the bridge, there's an acquisition of land from the church on 99 that's required. In discussions with the church, they indicated to us that there's some district unused road adjacent to their land that they'd like to acquire as part of this in return. And as part of the agreements, Bosa Kingswood, the developer Waterfront Landing, is agreeing to pay for all acquisitions of land to make this happen. So just showing you a map, the area in orange at the top is the district portion. There's the church properties in red. You can see where the new access goes in, where the white dotted lines are, and then there's some of the church land that's below that as well. So what's being proposed in this tripartite agreement is an exchange of land. Land coming from the church to the project would be the 32,000 square feet identified up there. The district has been identified at about 23,000 square feet. So what's going to happen is Bosa's going to purchase the land from the church. They're going to purchase the road from the district, and then the church and the district are going to exchange the properties. And in order for that to happen, there's a few conditions that have to be met over the next few months, including completion of a road closure bylaw. And then once that's all done, the transaction would complete 30 days after the conditions are all met. In terms of valuation, actually, some work has been done on this. The appraisal work was done. There's a range of values between $38 and $42 a square foot was arrived at through appraisal. But there was that land, if you recall in the earlier map I showed, there's some slope issues there. It's irregular shaped. There's a fair bit of work that would need to be done to make that property usable. A study was done by Binney, I believe. And that's been recognized in the purchase price. So the net market value that is being agreed upon now is $483,000, which is at the high end of that range. So in terms of next steps, we just, if this is adopted or endorsed, then we'll move forward to adoption of the road closure. There's an agreement between the church and Bosa that needs to be completed. That will happen once this deal is completed, and then we have to just do some statutory advertising. So we have a rather lengthy recommendation for council's consideration, and I'll turn it back to questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council for the staff? I don't see any. Would somebody like to move the recommended motion? Moved by Ted, Councilor Pryor, seconded by Councilor Kent. Any comments?
Yeah, I think that we did pretty good on this, and it's turned out pretty good. There was a lot of discussion on it, and for anyone questioning the numbers or anything, it turned out pretty good for everybody. Thank you for that.
No, I think everybody did great. Getting all parties to the table and getting everybody to cooperate on this was no small feat. And it also helps to move along the development down there at Waterfront Landing, so I'm all in favor of that. Get it done.
Yeah, I see really this is the agreement and all that sort of stuff, but this is really the first step in getting that access over the CN rail tracks down to the Waterfront Landing that will eventually provide an alternative access out of downtown. So this is a big step in moving towards that vision and that safety necessity that's been there for a long, long time. So feel quite happy to see this move along and let Bosa get on building that as soon as possible. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? Motion carries.
Thank you. Oops.
Is there any business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we have committee minutes and reports. There is a recommended motion that Peter Buchholz will be appointed the Public Arts Select Committee as the Downtown Squamish Business Improvement Area Association representative for a 2-year term ending September 30th, 2020. I'll note that. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Black and Wolf. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. There was no unscheduled public attendance. There are no staff or council and camera announcements. Open question period for clarification related to agenda items. Don't even have the media showing up anymore. Council or staff announcements, and just this is our last business meeting. However, we do have a meeting next week, and anticipate sort of doing the farewell tour next week. Hoping that all of council can be here. If not, be able to call into the meeting so we can reflect and recollect together and talk about the past, talk about the future, but I anticipate doing that next week. If people want to say something this week, I'm not going to shut you down or anything, but just wasn't really anticipating. It feels weird to do it this week and then have another meeting next week. So, firstly, good luck to all the candidates. It's a tough thing putting your name forward. I applaud you all. It's one of the most rewarding jobs you'll ever have if you're fortunate enough to get in. It's also one of the most challenging and frustrating jobs, but it's worthwhile for sure. So good luck. I think, I hope that at least everyone's learned a lot and learned about yourselves, learned a lot about the community, learned a lot about the issues. And certainly I think that if you really do campaigning well, getting out and talking to a lot of people, it's a really worthwhile experience. And I hope everyone has at least had some positive experience coming out of it. Good luck everyone on Saturday. Just a few announcements that I have. I just want to had my last mayor's breakfast last week. A lot of candidates showed up, which was fantastic. We just had a very broad-ranging conversation about what's your vision of Squamish in the future. I want to thank Terry, who's not here, but my assistant for always waking up early and helping set up these breakfasts. Just my right hand could not have done all this without her. And also just the people who come up with an open mind and an open heart and actually participated in the breakfast over the years. Really want to thank everybody. I know every mayor will make the role their own, but I think interesting ways of engaging the public are an important role for any council mayor in the future. So it doesn't have to be this particular vehicle, but I look forward to seeing what the new mayor will chart. I also want to quickly mention a wonderful event I went to on the weekend. It was a veterans lunch at the Legion, and it honored 4 veterans of the Second World War that are still alive here in Squamish. 2 of them, one of them just turned 100, the other one turns 100 in 2 weeks. And 2 of them just turned 95. And I chatted with them all, and one of them was a POW for quite a while at the end of the war and was liberated from a concentration camp in Berlin. 2 of them got the what do they call it? The Legion. It's the highest honor that the French government, they bestowed all the soldiers who fought on D-Day in Normandy, and they are there with their medals. It's kind of like getting the Order of Canada. So they, I should find out. I have it here. What's that?
It's the Légion d'honneur.
The Legion of Honor, exactly. I like your accent, good job. And so, and then 2 of them were seamen, were Navy, were in the Navy, and had various roles in the war. One of them was a Canadian who went to Scotland and met his bride there and brought her over. Like, their stories were fantastic. And it's Jim Crombie and Oscar Runzer, of course, is one of our staff's dads, so that was kind of cool to see. Ted Arsenault and Ted Gregoire. So it was actually a fabulous event. I guess they have this veterans lunch every once in a while to honor people who have reached these milestones, and it's quite remarkable. We still have people who went through that, our generations after their generation just have no idea what it was like to be in a world war for years and years and years, away from your family, in the most unimaginable conditions you can imagine. And, 70 some odd years later are still going pretty strong. So congratulations to them, and the Legion did a great job of organizing it. It was a lovely event. We did say they got all sorts of letters from the Queen and the Prime Minister and the Premier and the Governor General and Lieutenant Governor, and we've sent them letters on behalf of the citizens of Squamish and Council as well, just acknowledging their contribution to keeping our world free and, of course, their longevity. So that was quite lovely, and that was my week last week. Any announcements at this point?
You want to talk about committee of the whole for this?
Yeah, I'm going to send an email out, but there's only 2 candidates left. But next week we're going to have a committee of the whole, and I'm inviting the new council members to come and join the committee of the whole to do a bit of a passing of the torch. It's an opportunity. We've never done this before, and I know it's been a long time, but when I first got on council, there's this sort of like this week after where, as a newly elected, you're kind of walking around going, what do I do? What's the next step? And so we thought it was a good opportunity to invite new members of council in, have current council there, and have a conversation about what roles are, what to expect, some of the big things coming forward, have an opportunity for the new councillors to ask questions, the old councillors to pontificate and impart knowledge and gravitas. And
I'll be gravitas.
You'll be gravitas. Check. So just to keep that in mind, I'll send out an email to all the candidates. So just to give them a heads up, hopefully new councillors can make some time to be here next week. Anybody else?
I got one thing.
Go ahead.
So last week, I'm just looking at the date, Friday, October 12th, we received an email from the Environmental Assessment Office indicating that Garibaldi at Squamish is seeking to amend its environmental assessment certificate. And they were asking for our feedback by Friday, November the 2nd. And exactly.
Well, they never mind.
So Mr. Buxton sent them a blunt email indicating that the timing over a government election was not the best.
Unbelievable.
So then they said that they would extend it until November 16th. At which point Gary again sent something saying the first business meeting isn't until after the 16th of November, so we won't be responding by then. And we haven't heard back from them as far as I can tell.
It's a good thing Gary's responding about me. I would not be able to. I don't know. Is it the Environmental Assessment Office that just is not thinking? They don't. Okay. Yeah.
To me, that's a piece of feedback to the minister responsible. That is obnoxious and doesn't, it doesn't build confidence. I mean, we're trying to amend the EA process in BC. We're trying to build confidence in it. And that is hopefully just a massive oversight on their part. But I think we would be within our rights to let the minister know.
If it wasn't a pattern, I'd say it might be an oversight, but it's a pattern. So I hear a motion that the mayor write a letter to the minister outlining our
grave concerns.
I'll let Linda word it nicely.
Why?
Our concerns about the environmental assessments, deafness to municipal timelines, etc. That's a terrible motion, but you know what I mean.
So, but on that, I mean, they want a response and we haven't even had a council meeting. And it's just like, the answer is no.
The problem is they've set the deadline. If we just say no, then we lose the opportunity to comment. So I think the answer is you need to consider the fact that there's an election going on, that there won't be meetings. Even new councils have to have a little bit of an opportunity to, get their feet wet, and that there needs to be an adequate consultation period for environmental assessment processes. Not just this one, but all of them. They're tone deaf to the issue over and over and over again. So moved by Councillor Elliott, I'll second that. Councillor Racy seconded that. Anything to
Well,
add
I was
to
just
that?
going to make the comment, I mean, by definition, practically, these are massive projects. And the idea that we can just sort of, pluck a sentence out of the air and say this is what we think is just bizarre.
Do we even know, we haven't seen it, so do we even know what the amendment is? You know what?
November.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter at this point.
November 2019, no problem.
Yeah, just change the year.
That was, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll send that letter, maybe Gary can follow up again, and maybe we recommend a date that we think is reasonable to, without being unreasonable, to respond.
We're ready to.
I'll call the question, all those in favor? That was just a little gift at the end, right? That was just a little gift, thanks Linda.
Yeah, sorry, I know, like on the heels of the veterans and all the fun stuff.
Okay.
Killjoy.
Anything else?
No, unfortunately, I don't know.
Councillor Elliott, did you participate in the cumulative effects discussion?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, do you mind speaking to that briefly?
Yeah, just let me pull up a note on it.
So there was this meeting to end.
No, I just want to,
anything else, anybody? Come on.
I did participate in the conference call, so through the Howe Sound Community Forum, we know that the province has been working on this cumulative effects process, where they've identified 7 values that impact Howe Sound. And we've kind of been waiting, and we thought we would have something by now. What the folks said from the government, so this is Glenroe, is that they will have 5 reports ready in November, late November, early December. And what they have been struggling with is the approval process, because this has never been done before. And so just vetting it through all the different layers of bureaucracy. But they said if anyone wants some of the information prior to that date, they're happy to provide it on a one-on-one basis. And then they're also working on an ESRI option. So there's an online tool that they're working on as well. And so we're hopeful that that will be available by the end of this year. So that was kind of the update. So it's not, 5 of the 7 will be ready, and then they're hoping the next 2 will be ready in 2019.
Taking their time on this. Thank you very much. Anything else? Don't see anything. Motion to terminate the meeting? I'll move it. Seconded by Ted. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Council, we have a